Welcome to the Recruitment Business Accelerator podcast. Creating a successful recruitment business is not about you being the best hands-on biller or driving most of the activity for your team. It's about you becoming the best strategist, marketer, and leader so that you can create a powerful business that grows quickly and does not depend on you. For the last 10 years, Nikki Coffin and Katie Green have been advising recruitment business owners just like you to do exactly that. If you want to grow your business by 20% to 250% in 6 months or less, half your hours, and build a powerful recruitment business that doesn't depend on you, keep listening. If you want it faster, visit centeredexcellence.co.uk/apply. Here's Nikki and Katie.
Hi guys!
Hello!
Slightly later than planned. We have had some interesting technical shenanigans going on, but here we are, better late than never. And welcome to episode number 6 of the Recruitment Business Accelerator podcast. So if you're watching this on Facebook live stream, type hi, pop in any questions you've got into the comments box below. And if you want to listen to this in the future, so say, for example, you're listening to this as a recording, you might be in the gym or you might be driving to work or, you know, taking the dog for a walk. You're basically listening to a recording of a Facebook live stream. So if you wanted to listen to this live in the future, then head on over to our Facebook group, Recruitment Business Accelerator. Or you can head over to our YouTube channel called called Centered Excellence, or our iTunes podcast, which is also called the Recruitment Business Accelerator. So Katie and I are really excited about today's topic because we are talking about the 4 reasons your recruiters don't hit their targets. And for me, and I would hope that Katie would go with me on this. This for me is probably one of the most important areas that you need to get sorted within your recruitment business, because if your team aren't billing consistently, and what I'm talking about here is where they are billing over target month in, month out, or on target month in, month out, then you quite simply won't have a business that you can ever step away from, because what will happen is if they're not billing on a couple of months, you're having to dive back in to start billing again. And it means that you can never go on holiday, you can never step away from the business. You're basically trapped in this, in your recruitment business, which is probably not the reason why you set up in the beginning. And I remember going through this change when I was building my own recruitment business. And when I nailed this bit about getting consultants to make placements consistently month in, month out, things really began to change for me very, very positively. When my team stepped up and started to do that month in, month out, I was able to step back to work on the business. But it felt like I had total control over where the business was going. We had
to work for you, they will have an idea in their head of what it is to be a recruitment consultant. And many people, because you'll notice this when you interview them, will say things like, well, I really want to change lives, which we do. I want to help people to reach those career aspirations that they've been longing for. I want to help people get that perfect job, that right job that's really going to change everything in their life and has a ripple effect, as we mentioned, on all sorts of things, not just their life, but maybe their partner's life and their children's life, plus the lives of people that they're working with. So the people that they place, and then the people that are affected by where they've been placed. So what I'm talking about here is the dream, the reality, sorry, the dream, of what the consultant has in their head. And what happens is they join us and they have this wonderful picture of what it's going to be like being this recruitment consultant, and then realize that on the day-to-day, once they're in the job, it's actually quite different. The reality of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis is actually very, very different. So how is it that all of a sudden I had this role in my head that I was going to be this consultant, I was going to be changing lives, but actually on the day-to-day, I'm looking at how many CVs have I sent, how many first interviews have I arranged, how many sales calls have I made, how many hours have I spent on the telephone? So what happens is this dream and the reality do not complement or do not match each other. They're totally different. And what happens is that the purpose, the bigger person for why that person's taken that job and what they want to achieve from being in that role suddenly starts to be diluted by these activities that we're getting them doing on a day-to-day basis. So your job as their manager is really important, because you've got to link these two together, and you've got to link the value of those activities that they're doing on a day-to-day basis with that longer term, that meaningful goal and purpose as to why they took the job. Because otherwise they're losing their lack of purpose and their sense of purpose in the job. And this is really, really important, because somebody's purpose is your fundamental reason for being. It drives your behaviors and your actions. And if I'm in a role where I am fulfilling that purpose, that bigger purpose and sense of purpose in my role, then I will be taking more action. I will be happier. By the way, I'll be healthier. And also, you will actually be earning more money because you are doing something that is way, way bigger than just yourself. So it's so important that we link these two together. And to do that, you have to help somebody to understand how does the, I'm going to call it the lag indicator, which is actually their sales target. It's the output that they make. So that might be, let's say, a revenue figure. Let's pick a figure. It might be 120K. You've got to link that output and how many hearts that they are and lives they're changing with the actual day-to-day activities that they're doing, which are the lead indicators. So the two of those have to be linked together to have real purpose and meaning for your consultants. So they understand why they're taking those activities, why they're important, and actually what's the bigger meaning behind them, rather than them just being a target or something that you're micromanaging them with. So what that does...
add in here, because let's be honest, like the role of a recruitment consultant is actually not very glamorous. You know, fundamentally, most of the time, it's almost like you're in a call center, even potentially, you know, like you're a salesperson in a call center at a desk, and actually working, doing pretty mundane things on a day-to-day basis. And I think in order to get people through the door, we're selling them this dream of, you know, what they can create in their world and the difference they can make to the world through what they do. But the reality of it is very different. And we were just talking about this earlier on. It's a bit like if you take an elite sports person, you know, that their dream might be to win a gold at the Olympics. But the reality of how they do that on a day-to-day basis is really actually pretty boring. It's quite lonely, it's quite boring, and because you're having to do the same thing day in, day out, having to eat food that might not feel particularly enjoyable, but you're doing it for your body. So you're doing that day in, day out, and you're creating these habits and doing things, tiny things consistently, repeating. And that is not particularly a glamorous lifestyle, but you have to do it. If you don't do that, you're not going to win that gold medal. And it's the same in recruitment. There are these activities that you have to be doing consistently, which on the face of it, quite bluntly, are really very mundane and boring. And there's some stuff that we have to do which really pushes you outside your comfort zone, which is not necessarily nice stuff to be able to do. So I think it's important just to realise that you're bringing people into the role of a recruitment consultant, and they don't know what they don't know. You know, they have got nothing to compare it against because they've never been in that job. So I think a lot of people don't realise that. And, you know, we talk about, you know, testing people before you actually hire them, so they can actually, you know, the reality is this is what it's going to be on a day-to-day basis. But the payoff of that is that you might earn 6 figures this year, which means you can buy that dream house that you've always wanted, and you could be flying globally to work and service clients all over the place. But in order to get there, you've got to do this. So that's just it's people don't know what they don't know, and it's our responsibility to let them know that. But also, not so much that it totally puts them off it, because you could have somebody who actually would, you know, knows the lows with the highs, or, you know, we call it, you know, you need to have the darkness in order to know what the light is like. But you've got these contrasts and the reality of these contrasts, which is important to educate people on. So, sorry, back to you, Katie. I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah. So, I think we've probably covered it. So, it's linking the two and making sure that there's really meaningfulness behind those activities rather than them just being an activity, because this is where people start to lose motivation, but also lose engagement in the role, because it just becomes a glorified telesales role where I'm being hounded by numbers.
Yeah.
And the moment that happens, that's when you start to get disengaged consultants. And they definitely won't take action on something unless they understand what the purpose of that action is. So what does that really mean to me? What does it mean to the purpose or the goal that I'm achieving?
And people think if I give them these targets, like, you know, say you can earn this amount of money, then they just go off and do it. But if you don't link that back into their personal motivations, their personal goals, their personal why, and a lot of, I'd say pretty much everybody I've coached from the get-go just doesn't, you know, they never really stop to think about, why am I doing this job? Like, what is it that I want to create? But it's just because they don't know what they don't know. So it's your role to help them to do that. Okay, so the second thing, which reason why people don't hit their targets, is because actually fundamentally they are in the wrong role. And so you will see people who procrastinate, who don't hit their targets, who you might have, you know, sit down, you have meetings with them, you set very clearly, like, this is what I want you to do, and this is how you do it, and you think you've really got them bought in, and they nod their heads and say, yeah, I'm going to try really hard, and then they go back to their desk and they don't change anything. And fundamentally, these are symptoms of a much bigger problem, which is actually they're in the wrong role. And this is something we really are championing and wanting to change in the world of the recruitment, which is the 360 model is totally not fit for purpose in this day and age, and it's outdated. And so I'll give you an example. I had a fantastic recruiter called Jeannie, and she was brilliant account manager, and she would consistently make sort of 4 to 6 placements every single month. Now, she was in a 360 role, so once she filled all her jobs, it was like she then needed obviously to go out and find more jobs. So we would be forcing her to go out and do BD, and it was so outside her comfort zone and so outside her sort of psyche to do new business development, that she wouldn't do it. She'd procrastinate, and actually to the point where we would sit down and we'd do sales hours and she'd be in tears because she just felt so out of sorts doing it. We should never have put her in that role in the first place. If we'd have married her up with somebody who loved BD, so it's like your hunter type people versus your farmers. If he'd married her up with a hunter type person who went out and knocked down the doors and found these really good roles and then passed them over to her to service them and to make that client feel really loved, and then actually dug deep into that account to get more jobs out of that account, she would have absolutely thrived. But what ended up happening in the end is we had to say goodbye to her because she didn't have enough roles to fill. But whenever she did get a role, she'd fill 100% of them. And that was because we were working the 360 model. And that model is just dead. So people won't do things if it's not within their psyche. So if you're forcing your account managers or your introvert people to pick the phone up and make lots of calls and knock down lots of doors, if you're wondering why they're not doing it, it's because they shouldn't be doing that role. You'd be better getting someone who loves doing that, who's like, it's a real strength of theirs, get them doing that sort of 100% of the time, and then marry them up with somebody who chases after them, picking up the mess and clearing up the mess and making things, parts of the jigsaw go back together again. You will have a high performing team. So we were talking about Emma Warren, who's one of our clients and our rock stars, and she actually had a PA who was not performing very well as a PA. And actually, when she profiled them and looked at what job this girl should be doing, she actually, in her strength, she was a business development person, what we call a star performer. And so Emma just moved her into a different role, and she's now her top performing consultant. But she had her in like the admin part of the 360. Whereas actually she needs to be out client facing, knocking down doors. And as soon as she did that, she went from a disengaged underperformer who really was quite often just not engaged, not performing, to the top performer in the business, loving coming to work and absolutely flying. So the second thing is to make sure people are in the right roles, and you're helping them to work to their strengths rather than developing their weaknesses. Because you could spend years trying to develop your weaknesses and take it from being poor to average. Whereas if you focus on your strengths and you become a master at your strengths, you will be a world-class performer. It's much better time spent to master your strengths and to develop your weaknesses. Cool. So that's point number 2.
Okay. Great. Right. Reason number 3. So another reason why your staff don't consistently bill month in, month out is often, and here's the thing, it's not their fault, it's yours, is because no one is monitoring and reviewing and following up with them on actually what it is that they're doing on a week-to-week basis. So what I'm talking about here is tracking activity and having a really consistent review system with your consultants and with yourself. Because if you don't review it, if you don't monitor it, then they are not going to take action on it. It's one of the biggest bugbears or complaints that we hear consultants talk to us about, is that, look, I'm set these targets and I'm asked to do things, but it's never followed up. So, most business owners, we find a lot of the business owners that we work with are often not the best people to actually be doing the follow-up. And that's because they're not in flow with the detail and with the follow-up process. So they're often not completer finishers, but what they are great at is those creative ideas, those strategic thinkers, those big picture thinkers. So they're great at coming up with the idea, but they're not so great at following up with it. So if that resonates with you, if you think, well, actually, yeah, that sounds like me. I am one of those people where I'm always looking for lots of new opportunities and very good at coming up with lots of new opportunities. We call it the shiny squirrel syndrome, where, every minute you're looking out for the next exciting opportunity to take advantage of. What you're not so good at and what you don't enjoy so much is that follow-up, then this is definitely you. And if that is you, then you need to think about having somebody else in your business who can follow up for you, who can actually be doing these consistent reviews with your consultants on a week-to-week basis. And let me tell you for why it's so important for you. Because I want you just to think about the areas in your life where you've ever fallen short. So that could be something that you accomplished. Let's say you didn't accomplish exactly what you wanted, or you knew that you were capable of doing more, but you didn't achieve that outcome that you wanted. Then in each of those scenarios, if you looked at them really critically and you broke it down, probably the most often the reason as to why that didn't happen was because you didn't execute it. So effective execution is one of these tasks, or shall I say, it's literally a string to your bow that will set you free. So it's the single greatest differentiator between a great company and really successful individuals who versus those who don't. And that is because if you execute really, really well, so I'm talking about implementation here, if you do that, then you will be more successful, or even more successful than you could possibly imagine, because it's not what you know and it's not who you know, it's actually what you implement that counts. And Nikki gave an example earlier of Olympian athlete, and I want to use a similar example here because it really, really does work in these scenarios. So yeah, let's think about Usain Bolt. Now, if Usain Bolt, when he was training for that gold medal, he was obviously focused on that gold medal, and that was the output that he wanted to achieve. But actually, on a day-to-day basis, what he was doing in reality was quite different, because he had to make sure that he was doing the day-to-day activity to keep that happening. So he would be training every day, and he would have certain key success factors or certain tasks that he would have to do in terms of his activity, his training, that would lead to that gold. And this is what we're talking about, is helping people to make sure that on a day-to-day basis, they're really focused on what those key things are that are going to drive their output. So your job as that manager is to track that, is to track it and review it, and then to actually talk to your consultants about the output of that, so that you can help them to really, really keep on track. Because most people, things will come up left field in our day that will stop us, or that potentially will create a reactivity in us. And it means that we take our eyes off the ball. So your job is to really help them to see, first of all, to embody and to embrace and to see the value in it. But secondly, to make sure that that follow through absolutely happens, because if it does, they will be super, super successful. So the most important thing that you can do is to teach your team how to consistently take action on things that are going to shape their success. And those are the activities that we're talking about. I mentioned about those lead indicators. So things like jobs, interviews, registered candidates, it might be sales calls. You will help them to get really, really laser focused on those activities, those lead activities that relate to the lag indicators. And they're the things like the revenue targets, or the number of placements or bookings filled or contracts that they're making. So the most important thing for you to do is to help them measure that execution, because if they execute, they will be successful. And that's really the key to that step, is making sure that you have that review system in place, and that you have somebody, depending on your own style, you have somebody there supporting you to make sure that that happens. Because if you do, they will achieve amazing results.
And it's interesting, because if you look at both companies that we had, Katie's recruitment business and mine, both of us had business partners who were what we call creators, the really good strategic big picture thinkers, but rubbish at the implementation and follow through, just because the shiny squirrel thing would happen. But they hired us to do that part of the job, and I would say without us in those those businesses, the businesses would not be where they were. And I'm saying this because if you are a creator, a big strategic thinker, and you know that you're not great at follow through, you have to hire somebody who is a manager, who's an implementer. You won't be able to scale your business without it, because with the best will in the world, you'll want to do the follow through and the management, but you'll probably do that, maybe if you're lucky, for 4 weeks. After that 4 weeks, guaranteed it will start to peter off. So
because like you're saying, let's be honest, it's not, for a classic entrepreneur, if they are a creator, that's not the kind of element of the job that's really exciting, is it? It's not coming up with new ideas. And yet we know, if you look at any successful business, if you don't do the detail, if you do not make sure that the core activities that lead to the output are there and are happening, you can't create anything. So, that has to be in place. And for some of your consultants, depending again on their own profile, that's really important for them to make sure that you're there to help them, to hold their hands, to, encourage them to take that commitment and to keep going on a day-to-day basis. So, it's really important that you also make it fun and you create some energy around these activities, rather than them being that kind of stick on the back saying, you've got to get a certain amount of activities. Well, actually, let's create more value around what those activities mean, and then how I can be super laser focused to make them happen. It changes our relationship with them.
Yeah, and it's that day-to-day consistent execution that will give you the gold. And but you're not the best person to be monitoring it.
Yeah.
So this leads nicely on to the fourth reason why your recruiters don't hit their targets. And as always, it always comes back to you as the business leader, because you are the catalyst for everything. And what we find with the sort of uber successful recruitment business owners versus those who maybe scale to 3, maybe 5 people is the uber successful guys have made the shift to become a business builder. Whereas most recruitment business owners stay in like a really, they're really great salespeople and they feel most comfortable as a salesperson. So they never are able to step out of that salesperson mentality to become a business builder. And so what happens is they hit like this, Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach will say like a ceiling of complexity, whereas you actually have to learn totally a new skill set of how to build a business. And whenever you're learning something new, you're going through change, which is uncomfortable. And actually to make the changes and to implement the changes to become a business builder takes you outside your comfort zone. And what happens with most people is it becomes too difficult. So, they want to scale, but they know that in order to scale, they have to hire other people and train and onboard them. And so as you're training and onboarding, that means that your time is sucked away from your own billings. So your own billings drop and that person's not up to speed yet. So you go through this time where you're thinking, oh my goodness, if I carry on doing this, we're not going to survive as a business. So they then jump back into the hands-on billing. But the thing is, if you don't break through the ceiling of complexity, which is, your own billings and training somebody else and onboarding them, you will never grow. So what happens with most recruitment business owners, it's too difficult. So they just go, right, I'm just going to scale back. I might have 1 or 2 people. I'm never going to get beyond that. And so in order to become a business builder, you need to, first of all, learn new skills, but you've really got to have support of other people around you who help to push you through that ceiling of complexity. So when you hit it, you can just know that you're going to hit obstacles, but there's somebody else coaching and pushing you through that level. And that's one of the reasons why we set up our program, is because it gives you that community of support, but also we will push you to step outside that comfort zone, step outside that cave, even when you don't feel like you can do that. And so like whether it's us or whether it's another coach, it doesn't matter. The point is you need to find somebody who's going to push you outside your comfort zone, which is why pretty much all elite athletes will have a coach, because a coach will push them way further than they would push themselves. So the point number 4 is you have to decide to make the shift to become a business builder. And I remember when I did this with Sarah Bazzi, when we were going through the change in our business, even like 6 months into starting working with her, I was still hitting issues with people not consistently billing. And Katie and Sarah said to me, like, Nikki, you need to spend time coaching and training these guys. And I said to Sarah, you don't understand, I don't have time, because if I don't bill, then the business is going to go bust. And she said to me, you need to make a decision. You either want a bigger business or you just stay as a salesperson, because if you stay as a salesperson, this is never going to work. You need to make a decision today that you're going to become a business builder. And I remember we took a break. Went to the loo, was looking in the mirror, and it's like, I need to put my big girl panties on here and make the decision to change. And it was then, as I made that shift, where my team then became my clients, and I treated my team like my clients. That was when things literally changed, because I, made sure if I had a one-to-one with them that I turned up and I prepped and I was totally focused with them. That I committed to coaching and training them, rather than doing stuff for them. And I committed to being consistent with my reviews and my follow-up and my monitoring. And that was the shift that took our business from a struggling, inconsistent billing business to doing 400k net profit 12 months later. And it wasn't about the money, actually. That was nice. It was actually, I could see month in, month out exactly what we were billing and where I needed to focus and coach and train my team to make them even better. And that for me was the thing about it, having that control and that consistency, because that discipline, that focus, and that boring stuff, which I had to do, actually gave me freedom. So that's the fourth thing. You have to make the shift to become a business builder. And if you want to learn how to do that within, a matter of months, then we can totally help you. If you don't want to work with us, there is absolutely tons of books. There's not many people in the world of recruitment who will actually show you exactly what and how to do it. In fact, I am struggling to find anybody else globally who can do that for you, other than what we do. But there is information, but it's not linked to the world of recruitment, that you can use within books and videos. But find a coach, find a mentor. That for me is who can help you to become a business builder. Cool. So, Katie, anything else to add before we jump off?
No, I think good. Unless anyone's got any questions they want to pop in the chat box for us on anything that we've just covered there. But if not, no, I think these are the key things, and that, as you were saying, that the whole model, I can't stress how much that makes a difference to businesses when you've got the wrong people in the right jobs, if you like, or sorry, should I say right people in the wrong jobs, get that the right way around, because that just makes such a difference. It really does. So knowing that, you've actually got the right profile of people working for you and that you're putting them in the right positions is the first place to start, before you even then start looking at how you manage people around this. But, without doubt, we know those activity levels and the value of those activity levels, but how that is positioned and explained to consultants makes such a difference, because the amount of time I see people who they great people into their business, I call it like having the armbands. So they literally nurture them for the first 3 months. They're giving them training, they're inducting them, they're supporting them, they're helping them to make placements. And then before you know it, they think, right, induction over, 3 months in, they must know how to do the role now. They whip the armbands off, and literally it's like chucking somebody into the deep end, and people start drowning because they just are not fully immersed with how that role works. And actually, they've had so much support that going it alone is too much of a shift. So you really do need to be aware about how you're bringing people on and how you are selling that role to them. But secondly, how you're making that integration between them being junior and new to actually being fully fledged in that role and being able to hit those targets on their own. I think personally it takes about 6 months for somebody to properly get their feet under a desk and to understand how recruitment works. So I think that is important to bear that in mind.
Okay, so there's a question that's come in. I'm just trying to open up the full questions. If you are, the question that's just come in, Katie, is, hang on, just get it. So what would you advise if I am a creator? So if my manager of perms, and I'm just trying to get the rest of this question. Here we go. So Dawn's asking, what would you advise if I'm a creator? So my manager of perms, and then that comments just cut off. So if you are a creator, first of all, you would actually need to make sure you hire somebody who's going to manage your perms team. But what you want to be thinking about, Dawn, is that you would be that person then reports into you. So you are still tracking their figures, you're still analysing their data, you're strategically looking at what's working, what's not working, but you're not then doing the day-to-day implementation of that role. That's what your manager is doing. They're doing the weekly accountability meetings, they're doing the monthly performance reviews, they're tracking that the activity is happening on a day-to-day basis, and if it's not happening, then they're coaching and training the consultants on what they need to do to actually bring themselves back on track. But the point is, you need to have a manager. And the thing about not working a 360 type of model, you could have somebody who's, say, for example, come from a customer service background as a manager of people, who's able to make sure a project is delivered or a service is delivered on a day-to-day basis, who could be managing that team. And you then train them on how you do recruitment. So they know how to manage people, they know how to make sure that things get done. They might not know your service offering, and that's what you would train them on, how you deliver that service offering. So I would be looking at hiring somebody into that role who would be a recruiter initially, but who's got management or leadership potential. Or they've perhaps come from another recruitment business as a top biller, but they are a manager of people. They've got the management, and you've got to be really careful about big billers, because quite often big billers don't make the best managers. But you could find somebody who is actually perhaps being an average or consistent biller, but never amazing biller, but he's a really good manager of people. And so that is the point there is you need to find somebody who's going to manage your perm team. But it could be like a junior manager. It could be one of your consultants who just steps up into a team leader to start with, and then you build their skills up over time, and then build the team beneath them over time as well. Cool. All right. Well, I think that's it for the minute. We will see you guys next week on our live podcast. Have a great week in between, and take care. Cheerio. Bye.